Welcome to Unit 4, Lesson 17, Predict. And the goal of the course is to become a self-directed reader of complex fiction texts, plus whatever goals you have set for yourself. The tools for success that you will need are a writing utensil, a notebook with all of your documents and either stapled into your notebook or in a folder. You will need your Lesson 17 documents, the strategy sheet, the practice sheet, and the on your own document. You will need to have your chapter book either with you or in your reading book spot, and Post-its if you are choosing to use them to keep track of your determined importance reading move. So it's so exciting that we are now at Reading Move Strategy Level 2, Rung 5. So our little guy here, he's on the Predict rung, and that's really exciting because now is when we are starting to get into that deeper level of thinking. So the higher you go on the reading moves ladder, the more work you're going to have to do. But your brain loves that. So in Level 1, remember, that's where the focus is on what's happening, the facts and the accurate facts of what's going on in the story right now. Where Level 2 becomes more interesting is that in Level 2, understand, it's when you start to grasp the meaning behind how something happened. So you start to think about what's happening, but you're now not just thinking about what's happening and being able to name it. Now you're thinking about the how. How is it happening? How do I understand how it's happening? And you're working to grasp that meaning, not the who, what, where, when, why part, but the how part. So today we're going to start with Predict. And Predict has a very specific purpose in the book. When you're reading, you need to think about making meaning by using what you know and clues in the story to think ahead and anticipate what might happen later. Because when you're thinking in an earlier chapter about what might happen later, when you get to the later part, that's you grasping the meaning behind the how the protagonist got there. So if you don't predict and you just keep reading along saying what's happening, what's happening, what's happening, but you're not thinking prior to an event what you think might happen, then it's really hard to then grasp the meaning of how that happened. That means that you have to go all the way back and try to remember what those events were. When you predict, you are actually actively thinking, and that second voice is talking to you, and you're actively thinking and engaged with the text. So you're thinking like a detective. So how do you use the reading move? Well, just like a detective, first you need to know how to determine if something that the author is leaving is a clue for you to think about. So will that clue help you anticipate what's going to happen later? There are 3 very key places to pause and think if that is a clue or not. One of those key places is where you see some tension happening. Another key place to look for a clue to decide if this is a good time to make a prediction is if there's a big decision that the protagonist is about to make. The third place to look for a clue, just like what Daryl would say, a cliffhanger. So any place where there's information and you're left hanging, the author's leaving you on the edge of your seat for a reason. And just think about when you watch TV, when there's those cliffhangers and it makes you want to watch the next show because you have to find out what happens. Well, that's what predicting is. And so you want to take that and use it while you read. So when you know that something that the author left is a clue, now you're going to move into step 2. So you're like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of tension here. Oh my gosh, they're making a big decision. Oh my gosh, this is a cliffhanger. Now you're going to make a prediction. In step 2, you pause and think about what might happen later and why. On the strategy sheet, I gave you a couple of ways to think about this in your mind while you're reading. And these are what I call thought prompts. So if you're making a prediction, you might think, wait, I feel tension because of, and then you name what it is. So I think what's going to happen is, or another possibility is, or you might say, oh, I know what's going to happen next. I bet she's going to, because. So it's really important to think about what might happen later and why you think it. So it's that double-edged engagement. It's really getting you into the story because that why takes you to that ability to grasp the meaning behind the how something happening. So now you make a prediction. You predict what's going to happen next. I predict that the protagonist is going to go to the house at nighttime and do her own investigating. And that protagonist would be Hildy. Because maybe there was something that she was saying or doing, like she was getting a flashlight and she was making this decision about what she wanted to do to see what, was really going on at this house. So I would make that prediction in that point when she's holding the flashlight. So that makes me want to keep reading to see, well, what does Hildy do? Or what does my protagonist do? And then that's step 3. So just like a detective, you have to, in step 3, confirm, refine, or revise your prediction. So maybe something in between when Hildy pretending that she got this flashlight. So she has this flashlight, and the prediction that I made was that she was going to take the flashlight and go and sneak at the old Ludlow property later on. But as I read, I realized that she was taking the flashlight and going into the apple orchard. So when I hit that key information and I get new information, now I have to pause and say, okay, my prediction is not confirmed because she did not use the flashlight for that reason. I either want to refine, revise, or make a new prediction. And that's what makes this fun. Or when you get to the event and you see what actually happens, you have to pause and say, was my prediction accurate? Or what do I need to do to make it better? Or what happened? Like, how did this happen instead of what I thought happened? And the more you're thinking in the terms of how and the why, beyond just what happened. Hildy got a flashlight. Hildy went to the apple orchard. Hildy then did this. Instead, now I'm asking myself, why is Hildy getting that flashlight? What do I think she's going to do with it? And then when I get to the point of what she did with it, I need to say, how does that help me understand Hildy more? What's happening here? How did we get here? Was my prediction correct? Why did I get, all into thinking this was going to happen? Some of my students didn't like that part of the prediction process. They didn't want to not have their prediction confirmed. They always thought that if they made a prediction, it should be correct. And I'd say, well, then that's not a prediction. The fun in being a reader and thinking like a detective and making those predictions is its ability, whether you're right, whether it's confirmed, or you need to revise it, or you need to come up with a new prediction. The fun is that it gets you into the how. It gets you understanding the story more. When I was a kid, there were these choose your own adventure books, and my favorite part about the choose your own adventure book was that I had to predict what I thought was going to happen so I could decide what that next part of my adventure would be. But I had friends who absolutely disliked those books for that same reason. Well, what happens with me as a reader is that I'm still thinking in that way and predicting by using clues. I love to anticipate what might happen. Now, I don't get to choose what happens to Hildy in this story or any of the books that I read, but it's the act of taking what I know, because my predictions aren't just like pie in the sky. I'm taking what I know about Hildy. I'm taking what I know about my protagonist, and I'm carrying it forward even though I haven't read the facts yet. I'm anticipating what I think might happen. And that is the beginning stages of understanding the how something will have happened later on, because I've done the work prior to reaching that event. So, in the next video, we are going to practice predicting in chapter 6. So I will see you there.